and welcome to my channel. My name is Trish Mays and this is The Art of Crime, where I will be discussing crimes, mysteries, history, all while drawing or painting the people involved, from the perpetrator to the victims and occasionally the locations where these crimes were carried out. Please like this video, subscribe and leave a comment on suggestions to make improvements or who should be featured next on my channel. Please be kind, I'm new here. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin. Mary Flora Bell, or the Tyneside Strangler, born 26th of May 1957 in Newcastle upon Tyne. I decided to pick Mary Bell for my first YouTube video for a number of reasons. I'm from Seaham in County Durham in the UK, and for a period of Mary's incarceration she was held in a remand home in my town. To me, she's a very unique character in the fact that she is now free, has a new identity, and has a family. She now walks among us, and as far as we are aware, has not reoffended. This fascinates me. Mary lived in an area called Scotswood in Newcastle upon Tyne in White House Road. This was wide and windswept on top of a hill, and surrounded by an area called the Tin Lizzie, filled with derelict empty houses. Mary was born to Betty McCricket. Betty was a local prostitute specialising in BDSM. Betty gave birth at 17. For most of Mary's life she believed her father was a local habitual criminal, Billy Bell. Billy and Betty married in 1958 after Mary's birth. However, it is believed that Betty's own father was also Mary's. When Mary was born, the midwives handed her to Betty, and she cried, "Take that thing away from me." Betty would leave Mary frequently to travel to Glasgow, where her family was from, to quote-unquote work. Betty had at least one stay in an asylum, had lots of drinking issues, and accounts from her family suggest that Betty made more than one attempt on Mary's life during the first few years. Suspicion arose when Mary accidentally fell from a window and also consumed sleeping tablets. However, an independent witness saw Betty give Mary the pills as sweets. At the age of 4, Mary began to be subjected to sexual abuse as part of her mother's work. I can't imagine the damage this would have done to her. After the fall from the window, Mary suffered with brain damage. This brain damage was through the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with the voluntary movements and decision making. During her early years, Mary began displaying worrying behaviour at school. She was very aggressive and on a number of occasions attacked other girls, once stubbing a cigarette out on a child's cheek. This meant that people just stayed away from her. Although when confronted about her attacks, she was always honest, but showed little emotion. Her school and her parents failed to address these issues. As she grew older, she was exposed to a great deal of Betty's work with her clients. This included sadomasochism, which for a small girl must have been incredibly frightening. Her father, Billy, was often jailed and was also a drunk when he was at home and became violent. So this became the norm for Mary. Mary frequently left the house, hanging around with her next door neighbour, Norma Joyce Bell. She was no relation. Norma came from a loving family but had issues with mental disabilities and was easily led. Together, they began to terrorise other children in the neighbourhood. The 11th of May 1968, they took a 3-year-old boy to buy some sweets. He was later found dazed and bleeding. Although the police were involved, nothing came of it. The following day, her mother contacted the police again, as Mary had attempted to strangle her daughter Pauline. Pauline had told her mother how Norma had pinned her down in a sandpit while Mary grabbed her throat and filled Pauline's mouth with sand, until Norma moved away, clearly in fear of what Mary was doing. Pauline got free and ran home. On the 25th of May, 4-year-old Martin Brown had been playing with friends in the derelict houses. His mother was alerted by a neighbour to say Martin had had an accident. When she reached the house, a group stood outside. A gentleman was crying, holding Martin in his arms. Martin was rushed to hospital but sadly was pronounced dead. He'd been found in the upstairs room of the house. A pathologist was unable to reach a conclusion to his death, and the press cruelly dubbed Martin Rat Alley Boy due to being found in the slums of the derelict houses. Mary was escalating. On the 27th, police attended a break-in at a local nursery. They found pieces of paper. The words scrawled on one said, "I murder so that I may come back." And on another, "We murder, watch out." On a third, "We did murder, Martin Brown." These were dismissed as a sick game by police. The same day, Mary attended school and had written in her news book, "There were a crowd of people at the house. I asked what was the matter. There has been a boy who just laid down and died." Her teachers didn't realise the significance of this till much later. Following his death, both Norma and Mary would visit Martin's auntie's house to see her children, and they asked Martin's mother if she was missing a son and how she was feeling. This may, in isolation, seem innocent, but with the knowledge they committed his murder, it's cruel and callous. Before his funeral, both girls visited the house and asked to see Martin in his coffin. This distressed Martin's mother greatly. Things calmed down for a while, till Wednesday the 31st of July. 3-year-old Brian Howe, a beautiful little boy, joined other kids watching the demolition of houses in Rat Alley. At some point, Mary and Norma took him to a patch of wasteland. When Brian didn't return home, police were called and a search began. He was found on the wasteland. Snippets of his hair had been cut. He was spread eagle and half naked. He had puncture wounds on his legs, and there had been an attempt to mutilate his penis. The post-mortem concluded he'd been strangled. The marks on his legs were attempts to leave initials. Due to the similarities, police finally made the link between both murders and concluded they were looking for a child killer. During the police investigation, Mary kept popping up, and talk began of her strange behaviour and her boasts in the playground of strangling a boy. The police decided to talk to Mary, but were met by Billy on the doorstep with an Alsatian, who point-blank refused. Thankfully, there had been a witness to Brian's murder on the wasteland. He explained how Mary massaged Brian's neck, telling him he had a sore throat and that she would make it better, but her grip kept tightening. Both girls were taken to be interviewed using a child psychologist. Mary denied any involvement, and they were both taken into care. Mary was an intelligent child, and police pitied her due to her tender age and her obvious inability to understand the enormity of her situation. And despite her constant denials, the evidence stacked up against her. The scissors used to mark Brian were found near the scene. The police then linked up the notes found in the nursery break-in with the two girls, and more evidence was gained from the school when the teacher decided to look back over at their school books. It was then that they found the piece Mary had written on Martin's body being found. When police noticed the drawing, they stated that the bottle of tablets Mary had drawn next to the body was a piece of information that had never been disclosed to the public.
thus proving she'd been there. On the 8th of August 1968, both girls were charged with the murder of Brian Howe. Both Norma and Mary broke down under further questioning. Norma began cooperating with the police and implicated Mary, who herself admitted to being present during Brian Howe's murder, but tried to place the blame on Norma. Both girls were charged, and a trial date was set. Mary's mother was not in court for her appearance the next morning, but the children were not unsupported. Billy Bell, his sister, and Mary's grandmother came from Glasgow, and so did Norma's parents. On the 14th of August, the girls appeared in juvenile court and were remanded again. The following is an extract from a book I read called The Case of Mary Bell, a Portrait of a Child Who Murdered, by Gitta. It's a fascinating read, with really in-depth, interesting interviews with police psychologists and others who were part of the case at the time. Mary was sent to Seaham remand home, where she spent the next 3.5 months with other girls who were in trouble with the law, and among whom she figured as a star. The remand homes were at the time not run by the Children's Department but by the Prison Department. She was very worried about going to Seaham. Policewoman Pauline Z remembers, who took her there on the 21st of August. The Seaham remand home is 15 miles from Newcastle by the sea, standing in the midst of fields, walled on one side but with a view of a sea and a lovely beach 2 minutes away on the other side. It still looks like a comfortable farmhouse, which it was 100 years ago when Lewis Carroll used it while writing parts of Alice in Wonderland. The only obvious evidence of its present role is the locked entrance door, which can only be opened from the inside by a member of the staff. Catering for girls between 14 and 18 is a pleasant house with comfortable bedrooms and a big sunny sitting room giving out onto the garden, and a large modern kitchen, the hub of communal life, where the girls help to prepare tea, occasional snacks and late night cocoa. They sleep 3 to 5 to a room, where each girl has their own chest of drawers, wardrobe space and cuddly toys on their bed. There are no uniforms. School lessons are given on the premises, and outings for walks or shopping expeditions are in supervised groups. The girls are allowed weekly visits by their families, and their correspondence is supervised. The length of their stay on average is about a month. The matron at the time Mary came there was a former nurse, Miss D.A., a woman in her early 40s, tall and tweedy. She had a sonorous voice and a laugh, and a ruddy complexion, and expansive movements. Totally immersed in her work, she was possessive, but she was a type of dedicated social worker on whom the social services have relied for years, and without whom they would have collapsed a long time ago. Like many other people in the months and years to come, Miss A appeared to feel deeply protective of Mary, and was convinced that through the relationship she had created between the child and herself, could understand Mary and managed her perfectly well. Although an experienced house mother, she was in the formal sense untrained in dealing with seriously disturbed children. Nonetheless, during those tense months, she became Mary's educator, defender and observer. Her reports on Mary's behaviour and personality were taken very seriously by those who were later to decide her fate. She was of course very naughty, Miss A said. She disliked being ignored and draws attention to herself if it appears to be concentrated on other people. She resents authority, and she incites others, weaker girls, though they are frequently older than she, to behave badly. She screams and shouts, and there were times when she did not get her own way, she dirtied the floor and furniture. Miss A said she felt that Mary had a desire to seek punishment. On the 17th of December 1968 at Newcastle Crown Court, Norma Bell was acquitted, but Mary Bell was convicted of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. the jury took their lead from her diagnosis by court-appointed psychiatrists, who described her as having classic symptoms of psychopathy. The judge said she posed a very grave risk to other children. She was sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, effective an indefinite sentence of imprisonment, and she was initially sent to Red Bank Secure Unit in Newton-le-Willows, Lancashire. After her conviction, Belle was the focus of a great deal of attention from the British press and also from German magazine Stern. Her mother Betty repeatedly sold stories about her to the press and often gave reporters writings she claimed to be from her daughter. Belle herself made the headlines in September 1977 when she briefly escaped from Moor Court Open Prison, where she'd been held since her transfer from Young Offenders Institution to an adult prison a year earlier. A penalty for this was the loss of privileges for 28 days. For a time, Belle also lived in a girls' remand home in Cumberlow Lodge in South Norwood. In 1980, 23-year-old Belle was released from Askham Grange Open Prison after serving 12 years, and was granted anonymity, including a new name, allowing her to start a new life. Belle allegedly came back to Tyneside on several occasions and had lived there for some time after her release. 4 years after finishing her sentence, she had a daughter on the 25th of May 1984. The girl knew nothing of her mother's past until reporters discovered Belle's location in 1998, and the pair had to leave their home with bedsheets over their head. Belle's daughter's anonymity was originally protected only until she reached the age of 18. However, on 21st of May 2003, Belle won a High Court battle to have her own anonymity and her daughter's extended for life. Consequently, a court order permanently protecting the identity of a convict in Britain is sometimes known as a Mary Belle order. The order was later updated to include Belle's granddaughter, who was referred to as Z. Belle's current whereabouts is unknown. So what do you think about the Mary Belle case? Personally, I feel some sympathy for Mary. She had an absolutely appalling childhood. I do feel that her mother really should have been subjected to some charges of child abuse or neglect. Do you feel Norma should have been punished? Or was she punished by being in care for a period? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I was also fascinated to discover that Lewis Carroll wrote part of Alice in Wonderland here in my hometown of Seaham. I've lived here 42 years and I didn't know that, did you? Thanks for watching. I hope it wasn't too cringe or awful. Please like and subscribe and share. In the description below is the links to my research sources, my social media, my website, and what I've used to produce the drawing. I hope to see you soon for the next episode of The Art of Crime.